Today our journey into the Romanian countryside is based around Buzău in the southern part of the country, and the theme of today is part geological and part spiritual. Our first port of call is the Beta mud volcanoes, a fascinating thermal phenomena which viewed from the air resembles a volcano. The site experiences gases which erupt from 3,000 meters deep and eventually work through underground layers of clay and water, arriving at the surface as bubbling mud pools which litter the locale. And hello everybody from a hot, steaming, bubbly pool of mud. And this area is subject to thermal activity in the form of these mud baths that you see bubbling. And they're quite incredible to look at. And this whole landscape is completely inundated with dried and wet mud caused by these thermal springs. And they look like giant anthills when you view them from a distance. There's one here which is dried. It's been there for looking at it for some considerable time. But others are still very active. Obviously beneath this particular range of mountains here, there are obviously thermal currents coming from below which are manifesting themselves in these pools of liquid mud. So there's an aquifer below this which is heated up by thermal energy from the Earth's crust, and it's pressing it up to the surface here. And there's another one here. They're quite fascinating to look at. I don't know whether these are hot. I'm not going to find out. But as you can see, they are still very much active. But if you look around here, this is like some kind of a lunar landscape. And you can see how the sandstone in the background is completely inundated by rain and probably by some of this activity in the past. And this is, for Romania, quite a surreal landscape. And this is just one of a number of places that you can actually access. Here we had to pay 4 lei each to get in, and apparently 100 lei if we wanted to film, but as there's no security today, I'm not going to pay 100 lei to film something that can bring joy to other people. But we're coming away from this particular ridged area of mud. There's just one more over here which I'll show you, and you can see how dry it is. It's almost reminiscent of cow pats when you look at it. There is a slight odour of sulphur in the air. You have a very small one here, very, very small. But these seem to be, they fluctuate over periods of time. Sometimes you can come here, and you came here when?
With Mom 6 years ago, in summer.
And it was more active?
Oh, they're all active, yeah.
So it obviously varies from time to time. But for a landscape, it is an amazing place to be. This looks like the work of man, and yet all of this is cool. All this erosion and the thermal activity is completely natural. We're going to have a wander over the ridge there and see if we can see anything of any interest. But a lot of people come here and do comment on the fact that it looks like a lunar landscape. And there's even bigger ones we haven't located yet, have we? There's even bigger thermal pools which we need to find. But it's really is magnificent. And we're actually standing on the edge of a cliff. I'll just take you over so you can get the view. And you've got these ravines that have formed where the mud pools come to the surface, heavy rain drains away the mud, washes it down and creates these gullies which lead down to the other side of the hill. It's almost like being in the kingdom of a giant monster. It really is. So you've got all these deposits here that you can see, which is all caused by the thermal springs that we just walked away from back on the top of the hill. But it's to look at these gullies, it is almost art in itself, natural art. It's so beautiful. And you can just imagine what this place must be like when it rains. It must be something awful. And apparently people aren't allowed on site when it is in the rainy season, because it is far too dangerous. And especially here, you would easily slip into one of these gullies and drop off the edge of the cliff there. But look at the magnificent view in the background. All that nature is sort of hanging on here while this monster keeps producing more and more bubbling mud in the form of these mini volcanoes, which it's pushing gradually, slowly down the hill. And when you look around, you can see earlier examples. And of course, on a time scale, it's very difficult to say how old these particular mounds are. I should imagine some of these must go back many centuries. And because of what it is, it's obviously of no use for human development, and so these things have largely been abandoned. Now if we look over here, we can see these giant mounds. If you can see that on the camera, these must be earlier thermal springs that had ceased to function centuries ago. So yes, here we're very, very close to thermic activity. Must be a lot of energy down there, which perhaps at some time in the future may be adapted for human use. But for now, people can come here and enjoy this lunar landscape, this beautiful, remarkably beautiful sight. And look at this, we went down this, there's another gully here that creates almost like a mini ravine. I'm going to walk down here a bit. It's actually quite, when it's dry, you get good grip with your shoes. There's a lot of stone mixed amongst it. But Romania is a country of many surprises for many people. It's not what most people imagine the country to be. It has such a diverse landscape as well as culture. And I can imagine what this must look like when it's raining. You can imagine the gallons of water, the litres of water just flooding down here, carving its way through a path all the way down to the bottom. And you can get a better view here, of course. I wouldn't like to slip into one of them, that would be very difficult. I mean, considering they're charging people for doing everything here, you would expect that they would put in some form of safety feature which would stop people from falling into these gullies, which for me at the moment is a bonus because I can get closer to them, but I can imagine it's quite dangerous here at times. Aren't people throwing their garbage? Yep. The one problem with Romania is that there are people that cannot be bothered to use the bins that they provide and just discard their rubbish as they're walking through, as though magically it's going to somehow disappear. Now I'm going to jump over this one. I can get it. Oh, as you saw, the camera, I'm going to include this clip, the camera went flying as I jumped over the mini ravine. I'm not going to do that again.
No, the big one.
But isn't this one, it's so beautiful, isn't it? And it's so quiet here, isn't it? I should imagine at one time the thermic activity, or thermal activity, should we say, from the Earth's core through this particular region must have been much more intense. But it seems to be on a recession really, because it's more localized to that central point there in the distance where those people were gathered. So anyway, I thought I would share this magical vista with you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you've enjoyed this. There's not a great deal more to see other than more ravines and more mud piles. But what a unique and wonderful landscape, almost fairy-like. Absolutely beautiful. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and speak to you again very soon. Our next visit was to a unique hilltop landscape of unusual and almost ethereal rocks which can be found along a high ridge at Kosteș in Buzău County. To access it, one must negotiate some very narrow country roads, which eventually lead to a small plateau where, having parked your car, you can then ascend a very steep climb to see this amazing natural formation, which is known in Romania as trovants, or in English, concretions. At first sight, as you arrive at the top, these stones look like an array of many shapes, particularly upturned cups or even flying saucers. But having set human pareidolia to one side, these formations are naturally occurring and formed through a unique process. They are mainly composed of a hard stone core surrounded by sand that forms the shell. Minerals in rainwater form a reaction that builds pressure inside, and which makes the rocks grow and multiply. Much like the rings that make up the girth of trees, these trovants reveal layers when cut into, and each representing a period of growth. Although not alive in the scientific sense, locals and tourists alike have described them as living because of the way they appear to change with time. Obviously, our solitary visit cannot bear testimony to the stones actually growing, but a number have peculiar tuberous growths, which are indicative of the fact that the stones are actually growing and expanding. Also, and rather oddly, the stones allegedly move of their own accord, but of course so slowly it would take many years to move a few centimetres. Our visit didn't allow us time to explore the entire ridge, which traverses as a hiker's trail and runs for many kilometres, but as you can see from these clips, it is indeed a real natural wonder and quite a unique experience for anyone visiting the country. Well, that's it for now. I do hope you've enjoyed this visit to the quirky side of Romania's nature.